Hey there, welcome to my channel, The Story Thief. Thank you for being a wonderful audience and special thanks to those who contributed to make it all happen. You can find the donation link in the description of my channel, if you wish to make contribution by donating to support me to get more stories out. Well, now let's get into the story.
On the other hand, if it was the treasure that Surya had mentioned, then it would be well worth the fight. Milton needed to be sure. Faster! Everyone flew as quickly as they could. They still couldn't catch up to the sphere. It was so far ahead of them that it looked like it was starting to fade. Milton knew better. Come on, keep up. It looks like it's heading toward the Ice Fortress sect. Dad, look! Michael yelled, pointing at several figures in the sky. Milton wasn't surprised to see them. The sphere had, as he had expected, attracted attention, and people were flying toward it from all directions. The sphere sped up and dropped below the horizon. It's landing! Come on! Milton pushed himself as hard as he could, and his speed increased. Everyone else did their best to keep up with him. They all started to descend near the spot where they had last seen the sphere. All around them, other groups floated down to the ground. They heard a loud rumbling sound and glanced at each other in confusion. When they landed, the scene that greeted them left them stunned. Milton was right. The spot where the sphere had landed was the location of the Ice Fortress sect. It was also the Bottomless Valley's new location, and a newly constructed block of buildings had just been demolished when the sphere had landed in their midst. Milton and the others watched in shock as a gray fog settled in over the rubble. Then they heard voices and saw a group of people emerge from the fog. Milton's eyes widened. Cornelius and several disciples were staring blankly at the rubble. What's going on? Cornelius cried. Why can't we settle here? We were just getting started on it and it's gone. Milton stepped forward. Cornelius, what happened? Cornelius's eyes widened. Milton, you're here. I have no idea what happened. We were just attacked by something that looked like a massive blue gem. Before Milton could respond, Cornelius's disciples spotted him and hurried over to greet him. Milton, you're back! Everyone reached out to shake his hand and pat him on the back. Slowly, a few at a time, the other people who had been chasing the sphere landed and stepped forward. They all looked around cautiously. Milton looked up and saw Abacus Siegler landing. Abacus, were you chasing it too? Abacus nodded and smiled warmly. Milton, it's great to see you. Is the Moon Empress here too? Milton shook his head. She's not with us. I brought Cameron's disciples here so they could try to break through. Abacus's expression changed. Well, I know that when I'm trying to break through, it helps to have some natural treasures. If there's anything that I can do to help, please don't hesitate to ask. Of course, thank you, Abacus. I sense an ethereal aura flying past me. I believe that it's a 6th rank treasure. Warwick cut him off. It was a sphere of blue light. We were following it. It just crash-landed here. Abacus coughed. Yes, I wasn't finished. As I was about to say, it landed here in front of us. According to the rules, anyone who wants it can fight for it. But it basically landed on Cornelius's feet, and Milton landed a few seconds later. I'm sure that nobody will object to one of them claiming it. The sphere was a 6th rank treasure, and Abacus was tempted to claim it for himself, but it had appeared out of nowhere. He could afford to offer it as a gift. Milton smiled. He and Cornelius were as close as brothers, so either way, he expected to benefit. Abacus turned around and stared coldly at the rest of the crowd. Any objections? Everyone looked away. Nobody wanted to risk angering an Ace and Soul Grandmaster. He smiled faintly. Excellent. Let's have a closer look at it, shall we? I imagine that a lot of you are eager to learn more about it. He reached out with his right hand and made a fist. A violent wind picked up, lifting up some of the rubble and carrying it away. Abacus looked up and saw an object hovering where the sphere had crashed. It was 3 feet tall, black and surrounded by a faint halo. He closed his eyes and tried to feel the object's energy. A few seconds later, he opened his eyes again and turned to Cornelius and Milton. It's not actually a gem. Cornelius frowned. What is it then? It seems to be a very pure energy. It's more valuable than a 6th rank treasure. There's a darkness to it. It seems to represent some sort of infernal energy. It won't last very long, so if you want to try to absorb it, you should act quickly. Cameron would have recognized the source energy in the object immediately, and he would have known that it was far too valuable to give away. Abacus didn't, though. despite his vast knowledge and experience. He simply stared at Milton and Cornelius, waiting for one or both of them to act. Cornelius backed away and nodded at Milton. Milton turned to his companions. "Let's give it a try, shall we?" They took a few slow steps forward. When they were 20 feet away from the object, they felt the air growing colder. When they got to within 10 feet of it, they felt its aura. Milton's eyes widened. It really is pure energy. He guessed that it was the treasure that Surya had mentioned, but he wasn't sure how to absorb its energy. He didn't want to try it himself. Its energy is infernal. Who has a suitable cultivation technique? Patricia pointed at Warwick. I think she does. She's definitely got some suitable moves. Warwick smiled. My demonic shadow art technique does skew toward dark energy. This energy seems a bit unpredictable, though. Why don't you try it, Milton? You are still stronger than I am, after all. It will take me some time to reach your level. Milton coughed. Warwick's praise pleased him, but she seemed to be trying to pressure him. He looked around at the rest of the group, but nobody else spoke up. Thank you for your kind words, Warwick, but there's really no need to be so modest. Go ahead and give it a try. My technique won't work with it. Cameron's going to help me change my technique, but that won't help us very much right now. Warwick pointed at Michael. He could try it then. It's only fair to offer it to him if you don't want to try. Michael burst into laughter. That's very kind of you. But hurry up and get over there before the energy fades away. Are you sure? Absolutely. Get over there. Warwick grinned and stepped forward. If you insist. Melvin reached out and touched Milton's shoulder. Thank you. Then he turned to Michael. And you too. Thank you for this. You're welcome. Let's see what she can do with it. Warwick reached out and touched the energy with her right hand. The halo that surrounded it grew stronger. Soon, black flames appeared and danced around her. Wave after wave of pure energy jumped from the flames into her outstretched hand. She felt dizzy for a few seconds, but she quickly grew accustomed to the sensation. She felt the pureness of the energy clarifying her own aura. Sit down and start cultivating, Milton yelled. Warwick sat down, crossed her legs in front of her. Her body seemed to be acting on autopilot while her mind adapted and tried to accommodate the secret techniques that the energy was giving her. She knew that she had a lot to learn. She closed her eyes. Everyone watched her in silence. After just 5 minutes, her aura grew noticeably stronger. Abacus shook his head in disbelief when he sensed how much progress she had made. There's no way. That shouldn't be possible. She has just jumped to the middle of the aura's core stage. Milton exchanged glances with Michael. They had both come to the same realization. Surya's gift was incredibly powerful. People needed more than talent to participate in the trials on the Lost Continent. They also needed a certain level of cultivation that not everyone had the time for. To expedite the process, Surya had handed out gifts. How strong do you think that energy is? Michael asked. Milton shrugged. Let's wait and see. She has already made one breakthrough. Let's see if she makes another. That's impossible. It should be. 10 minutes later, another wave of energy wrapped itself around Warwick. Abacus gasped. Late Aura's core. How did that happen? He started to regret his decision not to claim the treasure for himself. He was the most powerful person there. He had let someone else take the energy and helped her make a tremendous breakthrough. But he was so more advanced than she was that he couldn't help wondering what it could have done for him. Warwick opened her eyes but remained motionless while she adjusted her new level. She was vaguely aware that everyone was staring at her and talking about her. It should have taken her years to break through to the late Aura's core stage. What exactly did she absorb? That treasure has an energy that defies the heavens. And she was the lucky one who got to take advantage of it. I wish that Abacus had offered it to me. The onlookers all believed that if they had been given access to the energy, then they would have made the same breakthrough that Warwick had just made. What they were all failing to take into account was Cameron's effect on his disciples. Anyone else who had absorbed the energy would have benefited. They would not have progressed quite as far as Warwick had. Melvin understood Cameron's role. He glanced at his daughter with tears of joy in his eyes. You've come so far with Cameron's guidance. You're stronger than me now. Warwick started laughing. Melvin rolled his eyes. But I'm still your father. Patricia and Mickey gazed at Warwick with both delight and envy in their eyes. Her breakthrough thrilled them. and they looked forward to their own growth. With Cameron's support, they were sure that they would keep growing stronger. Warwick could feel how strong her aura had become. She turned to Milton with a huge grin. How about it? How do I compare to Cameron now? Abacus was stunned. Cameron? Cameron Lee? Didn't he just make a breakthrough too? Gabriel had a hard time against him. He's the Moon Empress's husband, right? I imagine he'll become an Ace and Soul Grandmaster fairly soon. He noticed that everyone was still staring in awe at Warwick. His heart ached so much that he couldn't bear to watch. Congratulations. I'll say goodbye now. He made his way through the crowd, stepped into the air, and flew away. Warwick's face lit up as she watched him disappear. What he had said about Gabriel made her eager to test her new skills. She stood up, stretched, and approached Milton. Let's spar. He chuckled. So soon? Don't you want to wait a while? I'm ready. Cameron fought against Gabriel shortly after he broke through. He didn't need to wait, and I don't either. Milton sighed. Very well. If I must, let's go. Excellent. Warwick reached for her spirit sword. As soon as she touched it, the ground started shaking. Her eyes sparkled with joy. 2 seconds later, though, the sword flew out of her hands and landed several feet behind her. She frowned and went to retrieve it. Before she could pick it up, she too went flying backward. Milton tried not to laugh as she trudged awkwardly toward him, her face covered with dust and dirt and her hair disheveled. What was that? She asked. He could hear the disappointment in her voice. Don't get carried away, Warwick. Abacus gave you a tremendous opportunity, but you need to rest. You might experience some side effects. I hope that you don't end up regretting your wish to fight right away. Let's go back to New Moon Mountain and see what Cameron's up to. Warwick looked like she wanted to object. She opened her mouth to speak, but she thought better of it and just nodded. Milton turned to Cornelius. We'll be leaving now. Of course. We'll have to start all over now. But when this place is finished, I'll make sure that there is always room for you and your companions. Cornelius sighed helplessly and looked at the remaining rubble. Milton patted his back. Then he walked away and rejoined his group. All right. Are you ready to head back? The group returned to New Moon Mountain later that evening. Warwick sprinted across the mountain, calling out to Emily. I'm back here! Emily yelled from the back of the mountain. A few seconds later, Warwick arrived and burst into laughter. Emily, I'm going to take you flying with me. We'll have so much fun. Huh? What's going on? Just then, Cameron and Jessica joined them. Warwick turned to Cameron and grinned. Have you heard? I'm now as strong as... He smirked at her. And guess what happened? I don't know all of the details yet, but I know that I'll have to watch myself around you since you're so powerful now. She blushed. Well, it's just a level. Your strength and abilities defy levels. You can still defeat me just by wiggling your pinky. Jessica burst into laughter. You've managed to be both bold and differential. Congratulations. I can tell how excited you are. All right, Milton wants me to take it easy. I guess I should sit down. As Milton made his way toward them, Warwick hurriedly sat down and crossed her legs in front of her. Milton waved at Cameron. Walk with me. Cameron hurried over to his grandfather, and they walked back together. On the way, Milton told Cameron everything that had happened. Cameron stared thoughtfully at Warwick. Let me have a look. He closed his eyes and raised his hand. 2 small bolts of lightning shot out of his hand and bounced around Warwick. He gasped in shock and opened his eyes. Warwick, you've acquired a tremendously valuable treasure. You've absorbed source energy, which will strengthen your cultivation technique and your secret techniques tenfold. Your secret techniques might actually improve even more than that. Melvin frowned. What is source energy? Is it dangerous? Does it have side effects? Cameron shook his head. Source energy is the purest form of energy, and it's the best type for cultivators to absorb, refine, and comprehend. In addition to strengthening secret techniques, it can also help to develop energy centers. There are different levels of source energy, and if I'm not mistaken, then Warwick absorbed 4th level energy. Warwick looked thrilled for a moment, but then her expression changed. Is level 4 high or low? Level 4 source energy is pretty good. It normally takes a long time to absorb and refine source energy. A lot of cultivators would be thrilled to have level 4 energy. The Heavenly Tree's energy is level 5. Cameron waved his right hand. A gentle breeze ruffled the Heavenly Tree. A second later, The tree started glowing as wave after wave of crystal clear energy poured out of it and into Cameron's waiting hand. The energy transformed itself into a small pearl. He glanced at it and nodded in approval. Then he looked at Warwick again. That's what 5th level source energy can do. But level 4 is impressive too. By that time, the rest of the group had gathered around him. He turned to face them. Anyone who has broken through can now go to the Colossus world. When you're there, you can get regular reports on the mines. But what about you? What will you do? Warwick asked. I need to get ready to refine something. Cameron had guessed that he would soon have source energy to work with, so he wasn't surprised. He was pleased though. Emily wasn't about to get into a discussion with Marvin about her parents. It has nothing to do with you, she muttered. I'm leaving. We're just going around in circles here. Marvin laughed, watched her for a moment more, and walked away in the opposite direction. He immediately walked face first into a mirror. Have I just come from here? He asked himself. Maybe I should have been following her. He turned to look at Emily again, but she had disappeared out of sight. As Emily kept moving forward through the maze, she encountered more people. It gave her confidence that she was heading in the right direction. They clearly thought it was odd that she was traveling along, seated on a whale, but the mirrors prevented her from hearing the curious questions they threw at her. She pressed on for 2 more minutes when another group reflected in the mirror caught her attention. There were 3 people, 2 men in black and a boy of 16 or 17. Emily noticed that when the boy saw her, he was stunned. The aggression in his eyes annoyed her. What are you looking at? Emily asked loudly. The boy laughed and looked at her with malicious interest. He even reached out his hand to touch the mirror. Minnie, let's go, Emily said, rolling her eyes in annoyance. She didn't want anything to do with a boy like him. They walked on, passing mirror after mirror on their way through the maze. Did you see that? Duke said excitedly to Carl as Emily and Minnie walked away. We should try and capture her. That's not a good idea, Carl replied with a frown. Times have changed. The sect leader has given us our instructions, and we should be careful to follow them. After all, this is Cameron and the Moon Empress's territory. What does that little girl have to do with them? Duke asked grumpily. They'll be off searching for treasure somewhere. Why would they come here? Cameron has a daughter. Many people from the Colossus world have seen her. Paolo explained calmly. It's possible that was her. We don't want to take that risk. Duke seemed angry and shouted, I want that girl. She can't be Cameron's daughter anyway. From what I hear, Cameron's daughter is accompanied by a chimp, a black dog, and a penguin. That girl was clearly riding a spiritual beast from the sea. You're right, Carl admitted. Could she be a member of the Southern Domain's Beastmaster sect? Usually they're the only ones who capture spiritual beasts from the sea. It may have nothing to do with Cameron, Paolo remarked, relaxing. It wasn't that they were indulging Duke, but rather that he was exceptionally skilled at stirring up trouble. For one thing, he was known for being free and easy with the truth. Fortunately for him, Carl and Paolo paid little attention to truth and honesty. They had never been the most virtuous individuals, so they were happy to go along with anything that might benefit them personally. Seeing the two of them hesitating, Duke became more serious. If we catch her, I'll be able to settle down. And if I get the treasures that my father talked about, I'll make sure to get a piece of the action. Carl suddenly smiled. That was all he needed to hear. If you want to capture her, then we'll have to get out of the maze first. We have crystals we can use to leave and get ahead of her, Paolo said with a sinister laugh. And we have more that'll help us leave the ruins once we have her. Duke's heart was ablaze. It was the first time he had seen anyone as purely fascinating as Emily before. Then let's go quickly, he shouted. We can't let her escape. Seeing the other two had made up their minds, Carl's resistance faded away. He had never heard of a girl proficient in sea beasts before, and therefore, in his mind, she couldn't have been connected with anyone important. There was surely no harm in capturing her. Using the spirit treasure they had gathered from within, they were able to step directly out of the maze. They found themselves at the edge of a cliff, which fell away hundreds of feet to a vast ocean below. In front of them was a series of moving clouds that formed numerous paths through the sky. It looked like a roller coaster ride, but everyone knew that it was yet another maze. At the far end of the cloud maze, there was a city in the sky, shining with a mysterious light. Several dozen people were already walking on the clouds. Each time they stepped on a cloud, they would use their energy to test the speed of the next one. Their caution suggested that they had likely already witnessed someone falling into the sea below. There she is, Duke shouted, catching sight of Emily. She turned her head to look at him with a frown. But before she could say anything, Carl had sent out a burst of energy to try and stop her in her tracks. She was confident that a man of his abilities wouldn't have any trouble dealing with a child, but Emily's protective treasures manifested themselves, and Carl was left stunned. A long sword appeared in his left hand, which he launched at Emily in an attempt to break through her defenses. As it approached, her body lit up with defensive energies that knocked the long sword away. Carl's eyes narrowed. "Quickly capture her!" Duke shouted again. "I'm trying," Carl replied. "Let me have a go," Paolo said, stepping forward. A metal chain appeared in his right hand, and with a slight swing, a sparkling and translucent web 40 feet wide was formed. It enveloped Emily and Minnie, and although it couldn't penetrate the golden barrier of light that had surrounded Emily, it still managed to secure them. They couldn't escape. Carl took out a crystal, and their silhouettes flickered as they left the ruins. When they appeared outside, they didn't stop. Carl and Paolo led the way, quickly flying toward the passageway to the Colossus world that stood not far away. Nick, standing nearby, was startled. He hadn't been expecting anyone to appear so suddenly, and he had been caught off guard. By the time he realized that Emily had been captured, the group was too far away. He shouted at them to stop, but it was too late. They were out of hearing and quickly out of sight. "This is bad," he thought. He quickly took out his phone and dialed Cameron's number. "Emily's been captured in the ruins," he said. "Where are you?" "I'm on my way," Cameron replied. The phone went dead, leaving Nick standing despondent by the entrance to the ruins. Emily, on the other hand, wasn't flustered in the slightest. She had the pearl that Cameron had given her in her right hand. She knew that she could just crush it and be rescued instantly. She was more disappointed that she had been whisked away from the Cloud Maze. It had looked far more interesting than the Mirror Maze, especially with Mysterious City at the other end. She hadn't been given the chance to try and reach it. "What do you want with me?" she asked Duke angrily. "I'm not going to hurt you," he said. "I'm going to give you the opportunity of a lifetime." Emily laughed. "What kind of opportunity can you possibly give me? We're going to be friends." Duke said proudly, "Maybe one day we'll even get married. You can join the Silver Star sect with me, and we can spend our days exploring the eastern region of the Colossus world and beyond." Emily looked at him as if he was insane. "You'd better let me go," she said calmly. "You don't know what you're getting yourself into. If you keep me against my will, it'll be the end of all of you." "We can't let you go," Duke insisted with a smile. "It's just not possible. Right now, you can either cooperate or submit. Which are you going to choose?" "My dad will be here soon, and I have this," Emily explained, opening her palm and showing them the pearl that could contact Surya. "If I shatter it, none of you will be able to escape." "Are you joking?" Duke asked arrogantly. "Resistance is futile. Even if the Emperor himself appeared, he wouldn't be able to snatch you away from us. See that? In front of us is the passageway." Unlike Duke, Carl had been listening to Emily's words very carefully. "Who is your father?" he asked suddenly. Emily smiled. "My father is Cameron Lee," she replied. Carl and Paolo looked at each other. It was as if their hearts had stopped beating. The passage was right in front of them, but they couldn't take another step. "Don't listen to her," Duke said. "She's just trying to trick us." His tone was firm, but it was obvious that he was worried. "Cameron's daughter doesn't have a spiritual beast like the one she's riding. She has a chimp, a black dog, and a penguin. Do you think we don't know the way things are? Do you think you can lie to us? You might be used to being smart with other people, but it's not going to work on us. Come on, guys. Let's not hang around here. Let's get back to the Colossus world." Carl and Paolo hesitated and looked at each other uncertainly. Carl was already regretting getting involved. They lived in strange times, and he knew he should have been more careful. But they were where they were. He had no choice but to push on. "Let's go then," Paolo said eventually, and he led the way into the tunnel. On arriving in the Colossus world, they headed in the direction of the Silver Star sect. Emily was still not showing any signs of panic, which made Carl and Paolo even more uneasy. They simply couldn't understand why the young girl they had kidnapped was taking it all so well. "Now we're back. Our abilities won't be suppressed," Duke exclaimed. "Break through her defenses. That should wipe the smile off her face." "Good idea," Carl replied. He pulled out a long spear and advanced on Emily, but the golden barrier of light surrounding her remained impenetrable. Carl and Paolo looked at each other again. Such powerful defenses weren't available to just anyone. It meant that even if she wasn't Cameron's daughter, she was probably someone quite important. Seeing their confidence waning, Duke tried to remind them of why they had agreed to join him in the first place. "Don't forget," he said. "You'll be richly rewarded for helping me out." Paolo sighed. They were in too deep to change their minds now. Caro increased the strength of his attacks and eventually managed to break through the outer perimeter of Emily's defenses. Duke laughed in delight. He was about to rush over and grab Emily when another layer of strong energy surged out, forming a green defensive barrier around her. Caro was stunned. How many layers of defense does she have? He thought. He continued his attacks, and 4 minutes later, with a bang, Emily's defensive barrier was broken again. He reached forward and tried to grab Emily. But the moment he approached, a sparkling halo of light appeared around her. Caro was forced back before he had gotten anywhere near her. "Let's just get back to the sect," Duke shouted in frustration. "We'll deal with her defenses when we get there. We can't hold out forever." Emily looked at him mockingly. "I wouldn't be so sure," she said. "I still have dozens of treasures on me." Minnie nodded her head encouragingly. She knew how strong Emily's defenses were, and she was just as relaxed as her passenger. Emily was so relaxed that she took out another snack and began to eat. After a couple of bites, a smile appeared on her face. "My dad is almost here," she said calmly. "Sure he is," Duke said with a laugh. "You can try all the tricks you want. They won't work on us. Paolo has you locked up nice and tight. You may have your defenses, but you're not going anywhere." Emily ignored him and kept munching casually on the potato chips she had pulled out of her bag, which only served to irritate Duke even more. Caro and Paolo had a growing sense of foreboding. Something was definitely off. Before long, the Silver Star sect appeared in the distance. As they approached, they saw people leaving in large numbers. They were heading off toward different regions, anticipating the arrival of new treasures. Randall was among them. Just as he was about to leave, a dozen or so Silver Star sect followers gathered around him, engaging in conversation. Men and women, half of them in awe of Randall, were chatting. "Randall, I heard you're the fastest in the world," one man said. "Is that right?" "Pretty much," Randall replied casually. "Although I hear there's a dog that might be similar to me." "How can a dog compare to you?" a man asked incredulously. "Everyone knows you're the fastest. I heard that a few years ago in the lower realms, even Cameron couldn't catch up to you." "Don't compare me to him," Randall insisted. "It's a lot to live up to." A female follower approached him with a smile and said, "You were a star within the Ice Fortress sect, and you became a leader of the younger generation in just a few years. That's amazing." Randall wasn't interested in discussing his past in the now defunct Ice Fortress sect. "It's nothing too impressive, really," he said. "But you're so strong," another man said suddenly. "There had been more like you. Perhaps the Ice Fortress sect would have survived." Randall glared at the man. It was obvious that he was offended. The man immediately apologized. "I appear to have said the wrong thing," he muttered. "But I don't see how the destruction of the Ice Fortress sect has anything to do with you. No matter how powerful you are, you couldn't have saved it all on your own." "Stop digging yourself a hole," the female follower said. "Don't you have anything better to do?" "Randall survived the destruction of the Ice Fortress sect," the man insisted. "He has so much experience. What could be better than talking to the man himself? There's so much that we could learn from him. If our sect encounters any formidable enemies and needs to flee, wouldn't consulting Randall be a wise move?" Randall sighed and looked off into the distance. Finally, he let out a half-cold laugh and said, "I'm done with this conversation." He immediately flew off, leaving the followers watching in confusion. "Randall, we're a team. Please wait for us," the female follower anxiously called after him. "No thanks," Randall shouted back. He didn't want to be a part of their inane conversations anymore. As he flew, he caught sight of a group flying toward him, and his heart sank. He knew immediately what had happened. "Why did you capture her?" he thought. "Do you have a death wish? Are you trying to get us all killed? Life was hard enough already, and now you go and make a foolish move like this. We're well and truly doomed now." Despite his attempt to shake them, the group of followers had managed to catch up with him. "What are you looking at?" one asked. The look on Randall's face was enough to tell them that something serious had happened. Jessica squeezed Cameron's hand. He glanced at her and smiled. She was a treasure to him, and Surya had said that whoever had her would rule the world. "Can you tell me more about Source Energy?" Warwick asked eagerly. "I want to know what to expect." Cameron grinned. "That's understandable. Source Energy can be a bit mysterious. It will strengthen your secret techniques, and it will also give you different attack skills. You'll probably also notice some changes in your spirit energy. Changes? Should I be concerned? Changes should be beneficial. Source energy is precious in the divine world. It might take you some time to comprehend it fully, though. Warwick nodded. Since I've got source energy now, there's no need to go looking for it. I can go back to the Colossus world and help you, Jessica, and Emily absorb it. Melvin frowned. Anyone else? He asked softly. Emily started clapping, drowning out Melvin's question. He sighed. Cameron turned to Milton. Grandpa, can you make arrangements for everyone? Milton nodded and cleared his throat to get everyone's attention. All right, everyone. Let's head inside. Your destination will depend on your level. Those of you who have broken through to the Aura's core stage can start getting ready to head to the Colossus world. Highest realm warriors will be going to the mines, and Supreme Realm warriors will be going to a few different realms. The Tanager Mountain sect, Saber sect, and Cloud Water sect have instructions for the disciples. Got it? Everyone nodded. Good. Let's go. Milton led the group back across the mountain. Everyone in the Colossus world was stunned. They had all heard about the blue sphere of light that had hit the ground in the eastern region. The energy that it had contained had allowed a cultivator to break through to the late Aura's core stage in a matter of minutes. That wasn't the only shocking news, though. An orange ray of light had appeared in the west, allowing a second lucky cultivator to make a similar breakthrough. The Colossus world had witnessed two spectacular events on the same day. Two treasures had appeared in the sky, leading several people to wonder what else might lie in store for them. The treasures had also made their way into the pocket dimensions. A stream of energy had hit Winston, followed by several more. When the energy had finally died down, he too had broken through to the late Aura's core stage. News of all the breakthroughs quickly made its way back to New Moon Mountain. Everyone knew that something special was happening. Over the next few days, New Moon Mountain grew quieter and quieter as the warriors left. One evening, on their way to dinner, Emily reached out and tapped Cameron's arm. Dad, we're leaving too, aren't we? Aren't there ruins you want to explore? I'm happy to stay here with you. I like being home, and there's something that I need to do. Thanks, Dad. But really, if there's something that you need over there, then I can go. That way you can stay home. I'll bring Clifford, Ink, and Minnie with me. Cameron smirked. Thank you for the offer. Of course. Emily gazed at him. She was eager to explore the ruins. Jessica looked worried. It could be dangerous. You still don't have very much experience. Emily groaned. Mom, it'll be fine. I've already been to some ruins, and I've been to the Colossus world. I've seen what they're like. And if anything does happen, then Dad can come and get me, remember? I just don't think it's a very good idea. But Mom, didn't you say that children should gain experience? It will be a great way for me to learn more. And I won't be alone. I'll have Clifford, Ink, and Minnie with me. And I'll have plenty of treasures. I'll be fine. Dad promised that he would let me go sometime, but it hasn't happened yet. Cameron leaned over and whispered in Jessica's ear. She's made a few good points. She glared at him, but her eyes softened when she turned back to her daughter. I know how eager you are, but why do you always want to go by yourself? Because it's more fun that way. I don't like having people following me around. You're still so young. Warwick started exploring ruins on her own when she was even younger. Cameron started laughing. Okay, fine. You can go by yourself, but it will take a while to get there. The ruins are by Boris Lake, which is near the Colossus Mountains. Zephyr City is the closest city, but it's still pretty far away. To get to the ruins, you'll need to fly, then take a car, and then you'll have to walk the rest of the way. Do you think that you can manage all of that? Jessica gasped in shock, but Emily's eyes lit up. Yes, Dad, I can do it. Thank you. Cameron opened his storage ring and retrieved the ball that Surya had given him. You have to take this with you. If you have any problems, then squeeze it. You'll be safe. Of course, having Clifford with you will probably be enough for those ruins. Jessica frowned at him. Are you sure that? He squeezed her hand. It'll be okay. If not for his conversation with Surya, then he might have responded differently to Emily's request. Jessica sighed and turned to Emily. Fine. It looks like you'll get your wish. I know that you're growing up, but you're still my little girl. Please be careful. Emily rolled her eyes dramatically. I'll be fine, Mom. I'm serious. Don't forget about that ball that your dad just gave you. Keep it with you. If anything bad happens, then squeeze it. Someone will come and bring you back. Emily looked puzzled. Someone? Who? A man, about 60 years old. Oh, okay. Emily frowned, but her frown quickly faded as she imagined the adventures that she would have. She ran into the dining room and looked around. I don't see Mickey or Warwick. Who should I fly with? Jessica shrugged. It's your trip. You get to plan it. Emily snorted. After dinner, Emily ran back to her room to start planning her trip. Cameron and Jessica went outside and walked to the Heavenly Tree. Do you really think that she'll be okay? Jessica asked worriedly. I do. If anything goes wrong, then Surya can pluck her from the ruins and send her safely back home. But I doubt that anything will go wrong. Paladin is sealed, and the ruins seem to be stable. And what about you? Will you be working on getting more source energy while our daughter is running around the ruins? That was my plan. Should we talk to Surya? Should we try to trade some treasures? That might be a good idea. He's rich. Both of them burst into laughter. At that precise moment, Surya, who was sitting with Lula in the Great Palace, felt a chill run down his spine. He got the distinct impression that somebody was talking about him. Early the next morning, Emily jumped out of bed and ran to her closet. What should I wear? Something casual and comfortable. She took a quick shower, and then she put on a short-sleeved shirt, a white hoodie, and a pair of black jeans. She sat down on her bed and laced up a pair of red sneakers. Then she looked in the mirror. She frowned. My hair. The only thing that she knew how to do with her hair was pull it back into a basic ponytail. She briefly considered asking her mother for help, but then she remembered how her mother had responded to her transportation problem. She also realized that a fancy hairstyle probably wouldn't last very long if she got into a fight. No, I had better not do anything fancy with it. I'll just leave it down. She raced over to her parents' bedroom and knocked on the door. Mom, Dad, are you up? I'm ready to go. Come on in, I'm up. Jessica called out. Emily opened the door and ran inside. Jessica frowned. Shouldn't you pull your hair back to keep it out of your face? I wanted to, but... Come here. I'll just make 2 little braids. How about that? Emily smiled. Thanks, Mom. Where's Dad? He went outside to pick some fruit. We wanted you to have a healthy snack. He's going to make some smoothies for you. Smoothies? How thoughtful. Jessica snorted. Well, we didn't think that you would know how to make them. Emily started to protest, but then she saw the playful look in her mother's eyes. Thank you. You're very welcome. Please be careful. As long as you stay safe, this will be a great opportunity for you. Maybe we'll go with you next time. Okay. Anyway, I assume that you spent last night making some plans? I would love to hear about them. I talked to Donald, and he's going to help me. We're taking a plane to Saphir City. He arranged for a car to meet us there. It will get me close to the lake. I'll have to walk a little, but it'll be fine. It sounds like you have a good plan. I have to. Jessica laughed. Yes, you do. Cameron returned just as Jessica was finishing Emily's hair. He held up a large basket full of fruit. I'll just take this down to the kitchen. I'll meet you for breakfast in a few minutes. A few minutes later, Cameron packed a few carefully sealed cups in a storage bracelet and secured it on Emily's wrist. Everyone sat down together for breakfast. Cameron and Jessica both wanted to linger and chat, but Emily was eager to start her adventure. I need to go. I don't want to miss my plane. She ran outside and saw that Donald had already arrived. She called out to Clifford, Ink, and Minnie. Come on, we're going to explore some ruins. Clifford clapped, Ink barked, and Minnie chirped. Clifford and Minnie both shrank themselves down enough to fit into Emily's backpack. Ink ran behind her and jumped into the passenger seat of Donald's sports car. Donald got out and waved at Cameron and Jessica. Good morning. I'll make sure that Emily gets to her destination safe and sound. I'm taking her there myself, and I promise that I'll take good care of her. Emily snorted. How will you do that? You can't even block me. Donald sighed. Emily said goodbye to her parents and squeezed in next to Ink. Come on, make room for us. Donald started the engine and drove away. He glanced at Emily out of the corner of his eye. I'm a dispersing force now. Love, or you? I'm almost at the God Realm. Donald gasped. Really? Are you serious? Do you think that I would lie to you? He laughed. You're really growing up, aren't you? Well, you're still not a warrior yet. I am, she snapped. Whoa, calm down. I just meant that, well, you're so young. Enjoy it. Don't push yourself too hard. Why not? Donald grinned. I'm just giving you some friendly advice. You sound very confident. Donald glanced at himself in the rearview mirror, and his smile faded. I'm just saying. Well, I had to work hard on my cultivation because I wasn't sure what else I had going for me for a little while. I doubted myself. And a woman even left me because she didn't think that I was attractive enough. Me! I mean, look at this face! Emily started giggling. What's so funny? My face has been all over the internet. People like it. Don't you? Doesn't it look a little different now? Emily's giggles turned into roars of laughter. Yeah, you do look a little better. Is it an illusion? Donald sighed in exasperation. Whatever. You can tease me, but I've been told that people like what they see. Emily smiled mischievously. What about Warwick? What do you mean? Do you think that she likes what she sees? Donald gasped. He knew how powerful Warwick was, but he also knew that she wasn't always very tactful. He was eager to learn her opinion of him. Did she say anything? I'm not telling. Emily burst into laughter again. Then why did you even bring her up? Oh, never mind, we're almost there. They arrived at the company a few minutes later. Donald drove straight to the airport. He, Emily, and 2 members of the security forces boarded the small plane that was waiting for them. A few hours later, they landed in Saphir City. Donald pointed at a black car parked across the street from the airport. That's ours. The driver got out and opened the back doors. Donald, Emily, and Ink jumped in. The driver turned onto the main road. I can take you into the foothills. The road ends a few miles in. It doesn't go through the mountains. Emily smiled confidently. That's fine. I'll get out when the road ends. Several minutes later, the driver pulled over. This is it. Emily patted Ink's head. Come on, we're getting out here. We need to walk to Boris Lake. She opened the door, jumped out, and started running into the mountains. Emily, wait! Donald yelled. She stopped running and turned around. What? Be careful. Yeah, sure. Of course. Bye. An hour later, Emily stopped walking inside. Where's the lake? Are you going the wrong way? She pulled a compass out of her backpack. I think that we're going in the right direction. Why aren't we there yet? Ink started howling. What is it? Do you know which way to go? Ink took a few steps down a trail that led eastward. That way? Okay, let's go. With her compass in hand, Emily ran down the trail. She stepped on a root and moved 30 feet forward. After that, she started seeking out roots. She flew down the path. Ink howled and ran after her. 15 minutes into the journey, Emily's surroundings suddenly brightened. She spotted a lake nestled amid the mountains. On the north side of the lake was the gateway to the ruins. At the entrance, she could see about 20 people gathered there, with more than 100 onlookers standing at a distance. There was no suggestion the watching crowd was made up of serious martial artists. The majority of them were merely there to watch the show. Whenever the ruins opened, a crowd would assemble, drawn by the chance to witness renowned experts, often only known by their reputations. As she approached, Emily overheard snippets of conversation from the crowd. They were discussing the many others who had recently ventured into the ruins, including Andu, Tarquin, and a group from the Heavenly Talismans. Emily proceeded toward the ruins, where she found Nick waiting for her. It's already 12 o'clock, he said. You were supposed to arrive half an hour ago. Emily looked slightly embarrassed. I got lost a little while ago, she replied softly, as though sharing a secret. Nick burst into laughter. It annoyed Emily. She didn't see anything funny about it. Relax, Nick advised with a smile. It's easy to get lost around here. It's going into the ruins you should be worried about. If you get lost in there, it might be harder to deal with. Maybe you should reconsider going in. Things have been pretty rough recently. Emily looked at Nick with fire in her eyes. I've never noticed before, she remarked suddenly. But you look a lot like my great-grandfather. You must be about the same age. Nick was thrown for a moment. He stroked his beard awkwardly and said, I'm not that old. Your great-grandfather just looks very young for his age. And do you know why my great-grandfather looks so young? Emily asked. Because of his power? No. What is it then? Because my great-grandfather never meddles in other people's business. Come on, Ink, let's go. Emily produced a red leash, securing it around her right wrist and Ink's neck. Then, with strands of light flowing all around them, Ink and Emily leaped into the ruins. Nick shook his head and turned to the woman standing beside him. Do you have a mirror? He asked. The woman promptly produced a mirror from her bag and handed it to Nick. He examined himself silently for a few seconds. I'm really not that old, he muttered. A young man approached and brought Nick out of his reverie. Was that Cameron's daughter? He asked quietly. It was, Nick replied. So, you're saying her father is Cameron, her mother is Jessica, her grandfather's Michael, and her great-grandfather is Milton? That's quite a family. Emily's connections go far beyond just her close relatives, Nick explained. Having grown up on New Moon Mountain, Emily is well acquainted with all the legendary figures of the Tanager Mountain sect. She also counts Warwick from the Saber Sword sect and Patricia from the Cloud Water sect among her friends. The Azure Emperor Chase grew up with Cameron. She is very familiar with him as well. But that's not all. Cameron is on good terms with the true king of the ancient caves. He can travel to the king's domain with ease. In the Colossus world, Cameron has already dismantled several sects. And Emily's mother Jessica was the Moon Empress there, towering above everyone else. It's quite a family, yes, but it's so much more than that. As she entered the ruins with Ink, Emily swiftly deployed 5 layers of defense. Apart from the light wind enveloping her body, the other defensive layers illuminated briefly before concealing themselves in the air. The pair found themselves in near darkness, and Emily looked around in confusion. What is this place? She asked, looking down at Ink. Ink just shook his head. He was as confused as she was. The space was filled with large, smoky mirrors, each tens of feet long, with clouds swirling around every few hundred feet. Even the ground was adorned with sparkling, translucent mirrors. Looking around the mirrored landscape, Emily was confronted by numerous reflections of herself, creating an eerie atmosphere. Ink, who's that beautiful girl up ahead? She asked, pointing to her reflection in the mirror. Ink didn't get the joke. Forget it, she said. You clearly don't know beauty when you see it. She looked up into the darkness. Do you think we can go up and over the mirrors? Ink shook his head. Wherever they were, there was nothing but solid rock above their heads. Their only choice was to press forward on foot. This place is so strange, she observed. What is it? Why is there a world of mirrors? It makes me a little dizzy just looking at it all. I have no idea where we should be going. Emily decided she would see if they could create a path through the mirrors. She unleashed a fireball, and countless Emilys replicated the action. The fireball collided with the mirror, and in an instant, a mysterious energy flowed into it. The next moment, the fireball reappeared, as if Emily's reflection had shot it back at her. Ink intervened, jumping up and obliterating the fireball before it could do Emily any damage. Emily was amazed. It can rebound? She asked uncertainly. How does that work? Maybe Clifford would have more luck. She opened her bag and peered inside. Clifford, wake up. We need you. Clifford opened his eyes, stretched lazily, and finally climbed out of the bag. He looked around with the same sense of confusion that Ink and Emily had shown when they had first arrived. They're mirrors, Emily explained. I want you to try and break them. Clifford nodded. Growing to a height of about 10 feet, Clifford advanced and punched a mirror. However, it endured the blow and rebounded with an invisible strike of its own, forcing him to take 5 steps back. It was obvious the thing couldn't be hit. Forget it, Emily said in frustration. Let's just try and find a way out of here. This place feels like a maze. We can talk once we're out. She stepped onto Clifford's leg and pulled herself up onto his shoulder. Ink jumped up and sat beside her. It was a strange place indeed, and Ink wasn't going to let Emily out of his sight. The mirrors were somehow obstructing his ability to smell properly. And based on what they had already seen, he was determined not to underestimate their power. Clifford began to walk forward. But he was still getting used to his new surroundings and quickly collided with the mirror. He scratched his head, extended his palm to touch the mirror, and attempted to proceed. The vast mirror maze was proving to be a real headache for him. As Clifford gingerly tried to make his way forward, Emily carried out a few simple experiments. She tried pouring some of her water onto a mirror, which was instantly absorbed. She tried using her flame whip to smash the glass. She even tried closing her eyes and seeing if that helped the situation. It did not. All they could do was cautiously move forward, with reflections of them all around. In the Grey Palace, Surya was playing in the garden with his daughter when he suddenly sensed something. A treasure orb resembling earth materialized in his palm. He peered into it and murmured, Interesting. Has the little girl gone into the ruins on her own? She's chosen an interesting place. There are many treasures, but it's quite intriguing nonetheless. The maze should certainly keep her busy for a while. He kept watching Emily for a while before adding, Of course she has the spiritual beasts. With the untapped power of that penguin, She could easily escape the maze at any point. Getting out the other two beasts might not be so easy, though. Maybe I'll lend them a hand. Surya's eyes sparkled as he touched the orb softly, causing it to flash briefly. Daddy, come quickly! His daughter shouted. Surya stole the pearl, chuckled, and hurriedly approached. Well, don't run so fast, then. He called after her. Wait for me. In the mirror maze, Emily was beginning to find the journey rather monotonous. This is boring, she said. I want to get out of here. She had been nibbling on some snacks her mom had packed for her, but it certainly wasn't the adventure that she had envisioned. Suddenly, the hair on Ink's neck stood on end, and he stared ahead with a cold gaze. What is it? Emily asked in alarm. She tossed aside the food in her hand and focused ahead. Two greenish-blue gas spheres had appeared in one of the mirrors in front of them. The nature of the maze meant it was impossible to tell if the shapes were really in front of them or whether they were being reflected from somewhere else. But they appeared to be drawing nearer. There was a faint bubbling sound, and waves of pure energy began to emanate from the approaching spheres. Emily noticed Clifford sigh. Ink growled softly. It appeared that whatever the spheres were, they weren't a threat. They were something beneficial, something absorbable. Both Clifford and Ink had sensed it. Clifford looked at Emily. There were 4 of them there, including Minnie, but there were only 2 spheres. It made sense for Emily to decide who should have them. You want me to have them? Emily asked. Is it something good that can be absorbed? Clifford nodded. Emily was surprised, but she quickly chuckled and said, I don't need it. Dad said that I don't need to cultivate or absorb other things. You 3 share them. Ink indicated that he wasn't interested. Consuming the energy in the sphere might make him sleepy, and he wanted to remain vigilant so he could protect Emily properly. Clifford felt the same. No matter what the benefits of the spheres might have been, they couldn't risk falling asleep and leaving Emily unguarded, and so the 2 spiritual beasts turned their backs on the spheres and walked away. Emily knew the energy in the spheres could be easily absorbed by her friends. She had seen them absorb similar energy before, but she didn't comprehend its true significance. For them to turn their backs on it meant potentially giving up considerable gains. Unbeknownst to them, Surya had sensed that the energy spheres were still intact, and he pulled out the orb treasure to check on the situation. He saw the spheres floating several hundred feet from where Clifford and Ink were now standing. I'm giving you a precious gift and you don't want it, he thought. Well, you don't know what you're missing, and I want to make sure Emily is protected. So you'll have to forgive me for taking matters into my own hands. He touched the orb lightly again, and the 2 masses of green energy in the mirror maze flew toward Clifford and Ink, where they were promptly absorbed. 2 beasts could do nothing to stop it. Clifford looked alarmed for a moment. He signaled to Emily that she should call on Minnie for help. And then he quickly lay down on the ground and went to sleep. Ink managed to hold on for about 10 seconds before he was forced to do the same. Emily froze. She had no idea what had happened. One minute her friends had been fine, and the next they were fast asleep. Clifford wants Minnie to protect me? She thought. What can she do? Besides, Clifford and Ink are asleep, so I can't leave. I'm not the one that needs protection anyway. They are. After thinking for a moment, Emily took out 5 array flags, 4 defensive gems, and 3 thin ropes. She deployed the array flags, activated the gems, and tied the ropes to her wrists. Then she sat on Clifford's belly. We'll just wait here for them to wake up, she said to Minnie. The penguin just squeaked softly. How long do you think we'll have to wait? Emily asked. It was a big deal coming out here on my own. We can't just sit around here the whole time. Minnie squeaked again, causing Emily to roll her eyes. Aren't you a cursed beast? She asked. Is there anything you can do? Minnie began to think deeply. Can't you transform into something big? Emily asked. You could carry us all out of here. Minnie continued thinking. Emily suddenly became irritated. She grabbed Minnie and tugged at her a few times. Why do you always act so foolishly? She snapped. I've seen you turn into a whale. Why can't you do that? Minnie's eyes lit up. She transformed into her original appearance, nearly 8 feet long, with intelligent eyes resembling a whale on a much smaller scale. Her streamlined tail appeared well proportioned with the rest of her body. She was no longer squeaking. The sound she produced now was ethereal and filled with mystery. Emily felt a hidden energy lifting her and transporting her onto Minnie's back. The skin was smooth, but the energy around Emily made it feel as if she was sitting on a chair. She was very stable and very comfortable. Absorbing forces appeared on Minnie's back in front of where Emily was sitting. Clifford and Ink turned into rays of light and disappeared without a trace. This time, Emily was truly frightened. Minnie, what's happened? She asked. Did you eat them? Minnie sank deep into thought again. Eventually, she thought of something useful and adjusted the energy field around Emily's head. Instantly, Emily saw Clifford and Ink, much smaller than usual, lying on Minnie's back. They were surrounded by a mysterious force field. Had Cameron been there, he would have recognized it as an energy pocket, a unique subspace belonging to cursed beasts. Ancient beasts had such spaces as a way of accommodating many people on their backs. It was as if the passengers had been shrunk down to a fraction of their true size. The pockets themselves were not large, but they were stable and secure, and they could hold huge numbers of people or animals. Of course, Emily didn't understand any of that. Seeing Clifford and Ink, she asked, "Why are they so small? Can you let them out?" Minnie controlled her abilities and threw Clifford out. "How amazing!" Emily chuckled. "Put them back in again." Minnie obliged. "Release them!" Emily cried happily. After repeating the process several times, Emily finally understood that they were safely on Minnie's back. "Let's go," Emily commanded, encouraging Minnie to move forward. They instantly collided with the mirror. Minnie shook her head, looked at himself in the mirror, and entered deep thought. 5 seconds later, Emily had her hands on her head in frustration. "Minnie, what are you doing?" she asked. "Why are you always so clueless?" Minnie snapped back to reality and moved forward again. They bumped into the mirror again, causing Minnie to shake her head, look at herself in the mirror, and become lost in thought. Emily was exasperated. "Minnie!" she shouted. "Pay attention!" Minnie reacted instantly. A hazy black fog appeared around her body. She stepped forward once again and collided with the mirror. The appearance of the fog finally shed some light on what Minnie was trying to do. "Are you thinking of a way to deal with the mirrors?" Emily asked. "I'm sorry if I was mean. I can see that there's a method to your madness." They continued that way for half an hour, but nothing that Minnie did had any effect. They were undoubtedly making progress through the maze, but it was slow progress, and there was no way of knowing if they were heading in the right direction or not. "Wait," Emily said, suddenly lowering her voice. "There's something here." Minnie and Emily were no longer reflected in the mirror in front of them. They had been replaced by a man wearing a green robe and carrying a sword. He looked to be around 30 years old and wasn't particularly handsome. He seemed shocked to see them as well. They stared into each other's eyes, separated by countless mirrors. The man waved and said, "Hello." Emily was slightly stunned. "Hello," she replied uncertainly. "Is that you, Emily?" "Who are you?" Emily asked. "My name is Marvin. I'm a follower of the Heavenly Talismans, and you're the daughter of the great hero Cameron Lee." "How do you know that?" Emily asked hesitantly. "I don't think I've seen you before." "I met you a few years ago," Marvin explained. "Perhaps you were too young to remember. Your father is one of our sect's benefactors. A few years ago, when our sect leader paid a visit to New Moon Mountain, I saw you there. Are you here alone? Where is your father?" "Why do you call my dad a hero?" Emily asked. "Because your dad is amazing. He's the man I aspire to be." "I came out on my own," Emily said. "How can we hear each other through the mirrors?" Marvin laughed. "Because we're not actually very far apart," he replied. "I have encountered 5 groups of people on my journey so far, and I've been able to learn a little bit about how this place is built. It appears that we're on different paths, but we're both very close to the edge of the maze. The exit can't be too far away." "That's good to know," Emily said. "I'll be on my way then. Have fun." She patted Minnie, and the two continued to move forward. Marvin had seemed decent enough, but she knew better than to trust anything that strangers said or did. Cameron had taught her well. As Minnie made her way forward, there was a cry of pain, and Marvin went tumbling to the ground. As he fell, a few talismans appeared in his right hand as if he was preparing to attack. In response, Emily's defenses expanded. Marvin sat up awkwardly. "We were talking face to face just now," he asked. "I thought we were seeing each other in the mirrors." "It looks like it," Emily replied as 2 more defensive gems appeared in her hands. "And now you're on the floor. If you attack me, you'll regret it." Marvin raised a hand above his head and said, "We're on the same side. Don't make a move. If you're careless, the treasure your father gave you could kill me." "I'm not going to attack you," Emily assured him. "This is for self-defense." "You don't need to defend yourself," Marvin insisted. "All of the Heavenly Talismans get on well with your father. When I met him in the ruins before, I even gifted your mother a set of talismans, and later on, your father saved my life." Emily looked irritated. They never used to take me with them, she grumbled. It was always just the two of them on their own. Did I say something wrong? Marvin asked. Everyone followed Randall's gaze and saw the situation. Duke? It's him again, that scum. Someone grumbled. Can you believe that the sect leader could have produced such a troublemaker for a son? Asked an outraged man. The disciples had such strong feelings about Duke that they didn't hesitate to speak disparagingly about him in front of each other. Randall, let's go, said a woman. There's nothing here worth wasting our time. Just walk the other way whenever you see Duke. Things will go smoothly for you. Randall sighed heavily. We can't just turn our backs. Silver Star sect is on the precipice, and what we do now will determine our fate. Why? That little girl just now. Randall shook his head slowly, as if he couldn't believe his eyes. She's the daughter of Cameron and the Moon Empress. Everyone froze. Their eyes widened, and then they suddenly began hunting for their sound transmission crystals, talismans, and gems. We need to run, said someone. If we don't get out now, it might be too late. You! A disciple grabbed the woman next to him. Hurry and tell the master that Duke has captured the Moon Empress's daughter and is now escaping. Nobody wanted to go back into the sect hall, and none of them shouted out to warn the others. They didn't dare get involved if they could help it. They would quickly inform anybody nearby, but they certainly wouldn't go out of their way to put themselves in more danger. They didn't want to pay the price for Duke's foolishness. Eventually, word spread, and Silver Star sect was thrown into chaos. An elder, pale and shaking, ran to the main hall. Leader, it's not good. Duke has captured the Moon Empress's daughter. What did you say? Homer nearly dropped the book he was holding. A flush of anger and fear spread over his face. In a flash, he arrived at the courtyard that Duke usually stayed in. When he found Emily in the flower garden, surrounded by green light, Cora was coming at her with attack after attack while Duke was watching anxiously. Homer raised his hands, and Duke was sent flying across the room. Ian was stunned. Homer cursed his son loudly. As he looked at Emily, he broke out in a cold sweat. He tried and failed to think of an excuse for Duke's behavior. Even if he had come up with one, he had no idea what Duke had already told the girl. Father, you hit me! Duke's tone was angry but also surprised. Homer's eyes were fierce as he viciously glared at his son. That moment, he was furious enough to kill him. Emily jumped to her feet. Dad, Mom, what took you so long? Everyone spun around, including Randall and some protectors and disciples of the Silver Star sect, who were some distance away. Two streaks of light were quickly approaching. In the blink of an eye, the lights contacted the ground, and Cameron and Jessica stood before them. Randall wiped the sweat from his forehead. It was over. Why didn't you crush the pearl I gave you? Cameron asked Emily in frustration. I knew you were going to pick me up soon, so it didn't matter if I used it or not. Emily replied indifferently. By the way, that guy wants to capture me and make me his wife. Everyone heard Cameron's sharp intake of breath, and they froze. Now something is going to happen. Randall whispered to Homer, who was trembling. The big net was still covering Emily. As everyone watched, she reached out and touched it with her finger. Then she yanked down, creating a large hole in the net. She stepped through and joined her parents. Everyone else was stunned to discover that Emily could have escaped whenever she wanted to. They all stared at the family in awe. Wait! Homer's voice trembled as he took out a dimensional ring from his storage device and approached the newcomers. Moon Empress, Cameron, I'm sincerely sorry. My son made a terrible mistake. Luckily, nothing happened to Emily. If it had, I would have forfeited my life to make it up to you. But for the trouble you and your daughter have been through, I offer you this ring as compensation. It has taken me many years to acquire it. Please give me this chance to redress your grievances. Cameron took the dimensional ring and glanced at it indifferently. Then he pinched it between his thumb and forefinger, and the ring shattered. The treasures were lost in the air. Homer's heart sank. He hurriedly knelt down and begged for mercy. I deserve to die 1,000 times for this, but I assure you I had no idea what my son was doing. Cora and Paolo are also to blame, and I understand if you decide to kill them. However, I know you're both reasonable people, and I trust you will be fair and not destroy the entire sect. Or did you hear that I was reasonable? Cameron's tone was flat, and there wasn't a hint of emotion in his eyes. Jessica raised both of her hands, and a gargantuan sea moon fan appeared out of thin air. Run! The disciples shouted. As Homer and the others turned to flee, the lightning vortex appeared and surrounded the Silver Star sect. The huge sea moon fan came crashing down. "Let's go," Cameron said. "Emily, use that treasure next time, so your mom won't be worried." "Don't I have that dimensional door?" Emily inquired. "Shouldn't I use that?" "Use the pearl first," he replied. "That pearl isn't very high quality, and it will expire in a few years." "Oh, will the spatial gate expire?" "No. I didn't have a good time playing in the relic this time. I didn't really accomplish anything," she complained. "Next time your dad and I will accompany you," Jessica told her. The family continued talking as they flew away. Eventually, they disappeared from Randall's line of sight. The young disciple beside him was stunned. She stared with large eyes at the huge pit in front of them. "Our sect is destroyed," she whispered. "The Silver Star sect will never again exist in this world." Randall sighed. "You arrived only a few days ago, and now the sect is gone," she said. "I guess you'll have to find some place new." Randall didn't know if she was blaming him for their misfortune, but he didn't care. Energy wings appeared on his back and he transformed into a flowing light. He felt desolate as he left the place behind him. Where should I go? He wondered. A first-rate sect would probably be daring enough to accept Ice Fortress disciples. He just wanted to make sure that whichever one he joined didn't have any members who were stupid enough to provoke Cameron. Why do I always have to be the target of Cameron's terrorizing? He wondered aloud. Could it be that I really am suppressing my sects? He was in a rather bad mood as he landed in the middle of a lake and sat cross-legged on the surface. A long time later, a tremor suddenly shook the air. Raising his head, Randall saw a ball of energy form in the air, and then turn into a beam of light and fly toward him at an extremely fast speed. Without time to think, Randall activated his sacred art with all his might. A moment later, the ball of energy crashed into him, causing him to become dizzy from the impact. He fainted and fell helplessly into the treasure river below. The ball of energy disappeared. Very soon, the news of the Silver Star sect's destruction spread, and the unique situation caused a huge uproar. People couldn't stop talking about it. The Moon Empress made her move again? The Silver Star sect? How did they manage to provoke the Moon Empress? Homer's son captured the daughter of Cameron and the Moon Empress? Was he trying to do the stupidest thing possible? Pass down the order that no one in the sect is allowed to provoke the Moon Empress, said one of the elders. Don't do anything that might draw her wrath, including being less than courteous to her servants. If you do antagonize her, don't come back here. We don't need any trouble. The most important thing to do right now is to obtain an energy body, another elder advised. So far, there have been only 7 energy bodies, and all of them went to young cultivators who managed to break through into the later stages of the Aurus core stage. If a powerful elder were to obtain one, they might be able to reach the same level as the Moon Empress. The destruction of the Silver Star sect had awakened many sects, especially those in the southern and northern regions, as well as the east side mob. The thing that drew the most attention was the energy body that had appeared in the air. All of the Colossus world was talking about it. Cameron and his family had returned to New Moon Mountain, and they sat in the floating boat, looking at the view. I know you want to keep going out by yourself, but look what happened, Jessica cautioned her daughter. If your father didn't have a treasure that could locate you, how would we have been able to find you? You might be in real danger someday, and we would have no way of getting to you. I didn't expect to run into someone like Duke, Emily said a little vexedly. The ruins are the remains of a maze, and I entered the world of mirrors, and then there was the cloud passage. The world of mirrors wasn't very fun. But the cloud passage looked interesting. That's when I was caught by those people. I said that my father was Cameron, but they didn't believe me. Cameron defended Emily. The defensive treasure on her body could have easily blocked everything she encountered today. Not to mention, there's also the spatial gate and Surya's treasure pearl. There's really nothing to worry about, Jessica. Our daughter is 12 years old. She's no longer a little girl who needs her parents with her at all times. That's right. Emily was overjoyed that Cameron was speaking up for her. Jessica rolled her eyes at Cameron. But you still have to be careful, she warned Emily. In the future, if you encounter any danger, don't hesitate to use your treasures. You understand? Yeah, I know, Emily answered crisply. All right, let's go down. It's time to finish your homework. Emily, who had been still smiling, immediately looked gloomy. Mom, you really know how to ruin my mood. Nonsense. Homework is really fun. Jessica held back her laughter and tried to look serious. Emily snorted. Then she jumped down from the floating boat and walked away. That girl. Jessica shook her head. Cameron laughed. This was a good reminder for Emily to stay alert in the ruins. It was a good reminder for the other sects, too, about what happens if they mess with her. Cameron, when do you think I'll be able to fly on my own? If it takes the God realm to be able to do it, Does that mean that I'm a false nascent soul? Jessica was frustrated. This situation is a bit complicated. Cameron thought for a moment. Your attack is at the early level of the nascent soul stage. You can attack without any limits. After awakening, you will only become stronger. It's no big deal if you can't fly. After all, you have me. You were concocting pills this morning, right? Jessica asked. Did we affect you when we went to pick up Emily? It doesn't matter. Those resources aren't more important than our daughter. What resources? Jessica frowned. Franco's going to feel heartache when he hears about it. Jessica thought of the things that Cameron was refining. All sorts of treasures and various types of gems. The quantity was huge, but he spun them as easily as cotton candy. If the process was interrupted, it would still be completed successfully, but the effects would be reduced by a lot. However, Cameron thought such things were trivial. Even if he failed, it wouldn't matter to him. Cameron! Michael walked over, jumped into the boat, and sat on the side. 8 energy bodies appeared in the Colossus world. One also appeared in the mystical world, and the person who obtained the energy is a disciple of the sect there. He's called Orin, and he's one of the people who left the Colossus world 6 years ago. Upon his return home, he was at the middle level of the Aura's core stage. 3 more energy bodies appeared in the King's realm, and all of them have been claimed by the Great Palace. That adds up to a total of 12. Is this the gift that Surya was talking about? Of course it's him. In the evening, we'll go and demand even more gifts from him. In the afternoon, Emily finished her homework. She had worked quickly, but had still produced very good work. Although she would have rather been playing, she knew when it was time to buckle down and be serious. She never submitted poorly done homework. She put away her papers, and then ran into the living room, where she saw Jessica resting on the sofa and watching TV. She sat down next to her mother. Do you want to come with me to the fun fair? No, sorry. You can go play by yourself, though. Oh, then I'll go over later. Emily put her feet on a pillow, grabbed a bag of potato chips from the side table, tore open the bag, and started eating noisily. Is something the matter? Jessica looked at Emily with suspicion. Emily laughed and snuggled against her mother. I want to invite Macy over here to play next weekend. It's been a long time since I last saw her. Are you sure that's a good idea? What do you mean? Jessica looked at her in amusement. Look at how we went from being in contact with warriors, to being cultivators, to being able to fly across the sky. There are only a few people in this world who know that these things are even possible. If you want to bring your friends over here, they're going to find out. Their parents probably need to be informed about our situation first, because some of them might not want their kids coming over here. Emily had never thought of that. A multitude of thoughts ran through her mind. If you want to bring them here to play, Jessica continued, it's fine with me, but we'll need to ask their parents for permission. If it's so troublesome, maybe we won't play here after all, Emily said. Phoebe and I can go to Macy's place just behind the school. All right, let me know if you change your mind. I'm going to play with Rio. Mom, you can watch TV by yourself. Emily rolled off the sofa and ran down the stairs. At the fun fair, a group of small children were surrounding Rio. In the next game, Rio told them, we're all going to be frogs. Whoever can cross the river the fastest will get the candy. He looked hungrily down at the sweets in his hand, which he had stolen. His mother usually didn't let him eat candy, and he was determined to win. Go! Rio paddled furiously, navigating his board across the river as fast as he could. He was out in front, surrounded by a spray of water. Just as he was about to cross the finish line, someone suddenly knocked into him, causing him to fall off his board and into the river.
Thank you for listening to A God Among Men. Please subscribe to The Story Thief to get instantly notified on new episodes. And stay tuned for more.